Tomorrow night, vice presidential nominees Tim Kaine and Mike Pence face off in a debate. Fritz Goldman is here with a tech check on the debatable issue of voting online.
Elections are not even 2 months away, yet we have a lot of problems that are appearing on the horizon, the security and privacy of our election system. Jonathan Salem Baskin, who's the president of Arcadia Communications Lab, is here to join me and talk a little bit about that. Jonathan.
Yeah, Fritz, great to be here. Thank you. It's interesting. We hear a lot about voting being insecure. There's voter fraud, all these issues of ballots and people being recognized and voting when they're dead. Here in Chicago, we have a tradition of that. And the question is, why doesn't everybody just vote online? Wouldn't it be simple? If we can buy an Amazon book, why can't we vote for president? And there are pros and cons to that. The pros obviously are ease of use, right? We could have people voting 24/7. There'd be no inhibition in terms of work requirement. It'd also be easily identifiable, right? I mean, you'd have to register and there'd be the digital fingerprint that would say, you are you and I am me, and therefore each of us can only vote once for a change. Bad side is that they know who we are. And the whole premise of voting in America is anonymity and the ability to have a secret ballot. And by being recognized in a digital fingerprint, that means arguably somebody and or anybody can find out who you voted for. Now, is that a problem? That's for greater minds than mine to decide, but that's the dichotomy, and that's why online voting isn't just an obvious solution to our voting woes.
Well, now there are a couple of companies that have been in the news as far as their technology, not so much for online voting, but voting electronically, Sequoia and a couple other firms. And evidently these systems are so easily hacked. So talk a little bit about that. And I mean, that's clearly a business that's in flux.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's that balance of the promise of efficiency and efficacy with whatever you're again, voting for anything or getting your will recorded versus the risk inherent in doing so. So for things like voting for school board president or voting for class president or, sort of more localized, arguably more known quantities where in the school district we kind of all know who we are, maybe that makes sense. But as the stakes get bigger, as the audiences get larger, it gets a little more dicey. And it's just not a simple equation of saying better tech means better public policy.
And to that end, of course, there is online voting now for things like proxies and ballots for shareholder meetings and things like that. So, we kind of are dipping our toe in it.
Well, but remember, Fritz, that's always been identified, right? So when you got that paper mailer for your stock share and it said vote all the SOBs out of office, you had to sign it. So they've known who you were on those votes ever since day one. Voting for public officials here in the United States of America is a bit of a more precious commodity that isn't so easily transferable to the digital domain.
So, Jonathan, looking ahead, I mean, you think it's really going to happen one way or another? I mean, there's obviously a push for it, but who's pushing and why?
Yeah, the people who are pushing for it are those companies you mentioned that could make a ton of money doing it, right? I think the train on digital experience has left the station. So it's not a question of if we vote some way digitally, it is just a question of when. And it's that bigger question of at what point are we as citizens comfortable being known as deeply and intimately as we're known as consumers? So I think long picture, it's the wave of the future, as is much in the digital domain. I think short term, though, we're in for a lot of, I predict in November we're going to see some very interesting digital issues with, in terms of just counting paper ballots. So it's a work in progress.
And of course, we had the issue just a few weeks ago of maybe Russia hacking into various systems. So it adds a whole layer of security and just the overall sense that when you're voting, your vote counts.
Right, and the integrity of the entire process, right? So even if we can ensure that each vote was counted, we still have questions of whether or not entire elections are valid. And again, that's very topical right now. So whether the Russians are hacking it or again, the dead in Chicago are casting their votes, there are real issues of can we trust the outcome of elections? And again, that gets back to not only verifying each individual vote, but the process being at once transparent, but at the same time being anonymous. It's an interesting challenge.
Jonathan, this is fascinating. We'll talk more about it soon. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.